Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I want to thank my friend from Massachusetts for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I appreciated the first 60 seconds of his comments where he went through that kind of policy work, that kind of procedural work, the work that we do. We're on opposite sides of this issue. The Rules Committee is the single most partisan committee on Capitol Hill, and yet we always find a way to come together and share the debate time to move forward. But after that first 60 seconds of process, we went into 4 minutes of the President and accusations, one after another after another. Now, I've only been in this institution for 5 terms, Mr. Speaker, but that's long enough to understand that there's only one way to turn a bill into a law, and that's if Congress proposes it, Congress passes it, and the President signs it. Now, my good friend from Massachusetts knows as well as I do, the President has not vetoed one single spending bill that the Congress has sent to him. The government is not shut down because the President is rejecting bills that Congress has passed. The government is shut down because Congress hasn't passed a bill. Mr. Speaker, if you just listen to that opening statement, your blood pressure probably gets as high as mine does. Failure after failure after failure, disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, embarrassing event after embarrassing event. I will remind my colleagues that we are where we are because we came together and passed more spending bills on time before the end of the fiscal year than any other Congress in 22 years. Now, we could have gotten them all done. My Democratic friends in the Senate didn't want to move those along. They had perfectly legitimate policy reasons for doing that. I'm not going to question their motives. I will question their wisdom. We've got more done together than we ever have before. And we could build on that, I tell my friend. We could build on that, or we could go into our corners, we could put on our jerseys, and we can throw accusations out as fast as we can invent them in our head. And that's where we are. It's the month of January, Mr. Speaker, the very first month of this new Congress, new leadership. It's been more than a decade since I've seen a face like yours in the Speaker's chair. We've spent 338 hours in this chamber, 338 hours in this chamber this month working on appropriations bills. Not one has gone to the President's desk for his consideration. My friend from Massachusetts is right when he talks about pain in American families. My friend from Massachusetts is right when he talks about the expectations folks have of Congress and how we should do better. My friend from Massachusetts is right when he says this is not what any one of us was sent here to do. We were sent here to solve problems. And I promise you, unless your family is different from mine, Mr. Speaker, unless your relationships are different than mine, I've never solved a problem in my family by telling my loved ones how much it's their fault, how much they need to change, how much they're on the wrong side of the issue, and we're not going to do anything until they come around to my way of thinking. Hadn't been a particularly successful method for me. Now, I look back over these last 33 days. President sent the Vice President to Capitol Hill, came with the OMB Director, Mick Mulvaney, and said, you know what, I told you what I needed to pass the bill. I told you what I needed, what I thought was important for America and for national security, but I'll tell you what, I don't have to have exactly that. I can come off of that. I can negotiate down from that. I can move away from that. Let's talk about what the other options may be. No response. President this past weekend, I want to break this impasse. I want to find a way we can move forward. It's not about who wins. We all need to win as Americans. We all want to do better as Americans. I'm going to offer to do something that no president has been able to do. I'm going to offer to put into statute protection for the young men and women in the DACA program. I'm going to offer to put into statute protections for those men and women in temporary protected status that has since expired. I'm going to put that into statute for the first time. As the press release is dated, Mr. Speaker, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi rejected that offer 7 minutes before it was made. I'm not saying that that's the right answer. I'm not saying that that's the best we can do. I'm not saying that's where the conversation ends. I'm asking my friends, when does the conversation begin? More than 300 hours we've spent talking amongst ourselves and produced nothing to go to the President's desk. Sadly, I know that this issue has elevated beyond where my friend from Massachusetts, even as chairman of the powerful Rules Committee, and it is the powerful Rules Committee, it can move absolutely any measure through this House, and the Rules Committee has been incredibly successful. The House is moving appropriations bills like nobody's business, Mr. Speaker, because when you're in the majority, you can do that. You can do my way or the highway. That's the way my friend described President Trump's attitude. I will just remind my friend that's actually what we have today in this bill. My ranking member asked if we could consider some amendments to this bill. He was told no. My friend didn't say, let's just come down here and have amendments willy-nilly. We'll have a pre-printing requirement. We'll do what we call a modified open rule, just so some of our new members can have their voice heard, their constituents' voices heard in some way. The answer was no. Straight party line vote. All the Democrats said no, we're not going to allow any other voices to be heard, and all the Republicans said yes. I don't fault my friend for that. That's not a personal slight of any kind, Mr. Speaker. The Rules Committee is the Speaker's committee. It does the work of the Speaker. As powerful and talented as my friend from Massachusetts is, it is his job to implement the Speaker's will. Now, to his credit, he's been very bold in terms of trying to open that committee up. He's been very bold in trying to make sure more voices have been heard, but we find ourselves trapped in this appropriations cycle. We haven't actually gotten to where my friend's going to be able to do his very best work. We're still trapped in trying to do the business of last year. But my friend pointing out that the President's my way or the highway, which is inaccurate, but it's not helpful. Me pointing out that this bill is Speaker Pelosi's way or the highway may be accurate, but it still isn't helpful. We've got to have a conversation with one another. I can go down the list of the ways that the President has said he's willing to come to the table, but he's sitting at the table alone. I'm a vote counter, Mr. Speaker. I know how to count votes in this chamber. I have no doubt that the rule that my friend from Massachusetts is proposing is going to pass this floor today. I have no doubt that the underlying appropriations bill is going to pass this floor. This rule includes something called martial law, Mr. Speaker, which means they can bring up anything they want to, anytime they want to, no pre-printing, no opportunity to review it, none of those activities that we would say bring out the very best in transparency here. And if any of those bills come up, they're going to pass. There's no confusion in this chamber about who has the votes to win. The confusion in this chamber is how it is we get from where we are to where our constituents want us to be. And doing the same thing over and over and over again isn't going to get it done. It's my first time carrying a rule in the minority, Mr. Speaker. I knew when I walked down here this morning my job was to lose. I don't mind losing. But I do mind when the American people lose. And the American people are losing right now. There are no winners right now. I know the men and women of this chamber. There's some talented orators here. We can absolutely trade insults and accusations till the sun goes down. But there's some talented policymakers here too. There's some talented negotiators here too. As long as the President is sitting at that negotiating table alone, we are not going to get to a solution. But it doesn't have to be there alone. I appreciate his making the invitation, and I hope, as my friend from Massachusetts said, we will learn to take yes for an answer. I reserve the balance of my time.